A good night of Shabbos, everyone. As with pleasure, I welcome you to our segment called For the Shabbos Table, recorded a little late this week, busy week with very long dafim and very long chok, so it got a little bit pushed off till Erev Shabbos, but as I always say, you could learn this for the Shabbos Table anytime. It contains topics that are not solely related to the weekly Parsha, but also for any good Shabbos Table to discuss. This segment has been made possible exclusively by a very kind grant from the Rubin family, with a request that they should be zeicher to a ben zacher, a healthy ben zacher, plus to have tzlacha in ruchnius and in gashmius. May so be the will of Hashem. V'zacharti es bris Yaakov. At the end of the Teichacha, it says Hashem will remember the covenant of Yaakov through the tefillos of Klal Yisrael. In the biography of Rabbi Yitzchak HaGadol from Poison, now he was the Rebbe of the great Magen Avram. So it says that he actually was an orphan. He was orphaned very young. His father, of Avram, the Rav of Poison, had a Bechar, Rav Yosef, who of course he taught the trade of Rabbanis, and he gave him in charge of his younger sibling, Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak, who would eventually be, as I said, the Rebbe of the world-renowned Magen Avram on Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yitzchak did not have an easy beginning. He, in class, in Cheder, he wasn't able to comprehend his learning, and it was really hard. When he became age of Bar Mitzvah, one night after everybody left, he says he hid under a bench until everybody left. When everybody left, he opened the Aron Kodesh, put his head in, and started crying heavy sobs to Avinu Shebashamayim to help him that he should understand his learning. And he cried so long and so hard until he fell into a sleep. And in his sleep, his father came to him, Rabbi Avram, and told him, "Don't worry, your tefillos were heard. I will teach you every night." It doesn't say exactly if he came to him b'chalaim, in a dream every night, or he actually came to him. It doesn't say. But he taught him, and he taught him night after night after night, and he prepared with him for the next day's shir and helped him to show him how to learn. And one night, his father didn't come. So again, Rabbi Yitzchak went to the Aron and cried, Avi, Avi, lama azaftani, why did you forsake me? Why aren't you coming? So the next night his father came again and said, "Don't worry. Last night a tzaddik came to Shemayim, and we were all directed to go out and give him honor, and that's why I was not available." And he taught him until one night he came to him and said, "I already went over with you the whole Torah. Now, hanicheni, leave me, so I could go back to Yeshiva Shel Ma'ila." And as it's been pointed out, hanicheni meant you had a hold on me with your tefillas. That's the power of tefillas. The power of tefillah can be seen from the remarkable halacha that you're allowed to get engaged to a woman. You're allowed to betroth a woman on Tisha B'Av. Now, Tisha B'Av is at the height of mourning. In the beginning of Tisha B'Av, we don't even sit on chairs like at Avelis Yeshana, like it's a new morning. Yeah, how can you get engaged? So the reason is given is because Shema Yekadmenu Acher. Because if you don't chaperayim at the soonest moment, somebody might chap your kala away from you. And the Gemara Moed Katan elaborates that Shema Yekadmenu Achar B'Rachamin, that somebody might get there before you with tefillah. Now this is, at first glance, this is very hard to understand. What do you mean tefillah? Arbam yoim koydem yetziras havlad, 40 days before the creation of the embryo, it says Bats kol yotzes machrezes vaymeres. The Bas kol goes out and announces that Bas ploini leploini. It's already preordained that Bas ploini leploini. So how can you say that somebody could get her instead with prayer, that you have to hurry up and get engaged even on Tisha B'Av? So the Gemara in Moed Katan and Daf Yud Chesam and Beis elaborates on this and says that somebody might say to Hashem, I can't bear that another man should live with this woman. So either take me away or take her away. And a tefillah with such a depth of emotion, a person is willing to die rather than to live without her, could shake the heavens and uproot this preordained match, and he could win her over. And the Bach says, even though this person is a menuvel, it's not really based on love, because he said either he should die or she should die. So he's willing for her to die rather than that she should live with somebody else. It's not very loving to say she should die. So this guy's not a good guy, right? He's love-struck, but he's not a good guy. And yet Hashem will listen to such heartfelt tefillah. A tefillah of Imke Alev. This is reminiscent of what it says that the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur says that Klal Yisrael should have rain, and don't listen to the tefillah of the Ovrei Drachim. That means if somebody is outside and gets caught in a downpour and he says, Hashem, please, I'm getting drenched. Right, so don't listen. You see, if the Kohen Gadol didn't say that, the Rebbeinu Shalom might listen to him, even though all Klal Yisrael needs the rain. It's one against, hundreds of thousands. But the answer is that's the power of the depth of prayer. And therefore, Kal v'chaymer meruba mida toiva memidas peranios, then Kal v'chaymer ben b'noishel Kal v'chaymer, surely, if a person prays a worthy prayer, Hashem, help me with my learning, help me have better shalom bayis, Hashem, help me that I should be able to have good health, that I should be able to do your mitzvahs. If a person davens a good prayer, how much powerful is a strong prayer? It's interesting that the Aleinu L'Shabeach says, what happens if there's a soldier or a person who's very weak and ill, and he could only say one prayer in a 24-hour period? So he says, which prayer should he pray? Shachris, Mincha, or Mariv? So the Aleinu L'Shabeach says initially that we should be able to extrapolate from the Gemara in Brachos on Daf Vav Amud Beis. The Gemara says, La'olam yehei adam zor b'tfilas mincha. A person should be very careful with the prayer of mincha. Shari Eliyahu lo'inena ela b'tfilas mincha. Because Eliyahu was only answered by the tefillah of mincha. So in that Gemara, it would seem to be that if he has a choice of shachris, mincha, or marav, he should have a mincha. But then he says, according to the reason of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, that why is mincha so precious? Because shachris is not so hard because it's before you start your day. And marav is not so hard because it's when your day is over. But mincha, which is smack in the middle of the day, in the middle of clients, in the middle of orders, in the middle of everything busy, that's really special. And it's interesting that mincha is called a gift. Mincha means a gift. Also, it's the same letters as nechama. It brings consolation. But then, because of this, Rav Zilberstein says that maybe vasikin is very powerful, because to get up to daven, before sunrise, that Gal Yisrael should be next to the tefillah at the crack of sunrise, which is very hard on a person to get up so early, might also be very powerful. I would like to say that the reason of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is not applicable to the Chayil. Chayil is not at work. For the Chayil, it's always hard to daven. For the soldier, it's always hard for him to get away. So perhaps then he should daven the first prayer. He does quote Rav Zilberstein, the famous Radvaz. The Radvaz says if somebody's in jail and he has a furlough for one tefillah, he shouldn't save it for Yom Kippur. He should take the very first tefillah. And here, certainly, he's a sick person. Maybe if he davens the first tefillah, he'll have koyach to do the next one. He could daven for that. The soldier who's always in danger, if he davens the first tefillah, it might save his life. Also wanted to say that which it says in brachas, that la'olam yehei adam zor tefillas hamincha, is very possible that doesn't mean that it's superior to Shacharis and Marav. It could be the opposite, that we might think that mincha is the least because it's not preceded with brachas, it's not preceded with Kriya Shema. You know, the Zohar waxes eloquently of how the Birchas Kriya Shema prepares the Matronisa, the Shechina, to meet up with the Rabbeinu Shalom, Kutche Barichu, in Shemona Esrei. And therefore, we might think that Mincha, which doesn't have this preface of brachas and Kriya Shema like Shacharis, maybe it's the least. So the Gemara tells us it's not the least. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most. You know, it's like Rav Zilberstein once asked that how could you say that you should have kavanah in Pesach Yadecha Masbir L'chol Chayrotzen? It doesn't have Hashem's name. There are so many psukim in Ashrei that have Hashem's name. Karv Hashem L'chol Kairov L'chol Asher Yikro V'emes. Right? Tilas Hashem Yedaber Pi. Could it be that we should have in mind in Pesach Yadecha that doesn't have Hashem's name more than the verses that have Hashem's name? And he says a very novel thing. He says when it tells us to have in mind in Pesach Yadecha, it says there's one pasuk in Ashrei that although it doesn't have Hashem's name, you have to have kavanah. But surely if it has Hashem's name, you surely should have to have kavanah. Zacharti es brisi Yaakov, v'afes brisi Yitzchak. No. Yeah, right. Zacharti es brisi Yaakov, v'afes brisi Yitzchak, v'afes brisi Avram Eskar, v'oretz Eskar. So it's interesting. Rashi points out that it says Zechira by Yaakov, it says Zechira by Avram, but it doesn't say Zechira by Yitzchak, right? Zacharti es brisi Yaakov, v'afes brisi Yitzchak, v'afes brisi Avram Eskar. So it says Zechira by Yaakov and Avram and not by Yitzchak. So Rashi says an interesting thing. Rashi says it's because by Yitzchak, Hashem has in front of him the offer of a Kedes Yitzchak. So the Chidah says Pshat in Rashi, so therefore Yitzchak is included in V'ha'oretz Eskar. The pasuk ends V'ha'oretz Eskar. And part of the Oretz is the Afar Yitzchak. I don't think that's Pashup Pshat in Rashi. The Pashup Pshat in Rashi is where do we need Zechira when something is not in front of you? But the Efer Yitzchak is always in front of Hashem, so it doesn't need Zechira. Now, in this pasuk, the Balaturim says an interesting thing. It says that Avram is referred to as the Eved Hashem, and Yaakov is referred to as an Eved Hashem. Yitzchak is not referred to as an Eved Hashem. And the pshat that they say is, what the Balaturim says, is that Avram and Yaakov lived in Chutz La'aretz and in Eretz Yisrael. But Yitzchak never lived in Chutz La'aretz. An Eved is a person who lives through hard times. Avram and Yaakov lived in Chutz La'aretz. Yitzchak didn't live in Chutz La'aretz. And that's what David is. Ani Abducha ben Amasecha. David, a melech, who had a life of one Yisurin after another, that's an Eved. Daniel was the quintessential Eved Hashem. As a matter of fact, Daniel is the letters of La Adonai. It was the quintessential Eved Hashem because Daniel was in the lion's den. He was in the employ of Goyim, so he was the quintessential Eved Hashem. Now I want to talk to you about a difficult subject. It's a difficult subject. It says, Lo ma'astim, u'lo ga'altim. There, in life, there are lo aleinu challenges, the vicissitudes of life. But the Ben Ish Chai says that we should be careful not to fall into atzvus. We should be careful not to fall into sadness and depression. And the Ben Ish Chai, in his Aderes Eliyahu, says that we should know that atzvus is not from the Rebbeinu Shalom. He quotes the famous Gemara in Chulin Daf Zayin Amud Beis. The Gemara says, "Ein adam noikeif etzboi milamata." A person doesn't bruise his finger below, elim kein machrizin olav milmala, unless they announce this above. Right? Hakol b'dei shemayim. However, says the Ben Ish Chai, a very big novelty. Sadness is never decreed upon a person. If a person is depressed, is sad, that's the Atzas HaYetzer. That's only because we mess up. And the Bali Musar, the Bali Musar quote, that a hint to this is, Atzabeim kesef v'zav. Now, Atzabeim means idols. But Atzabeim is also the word of Atzvus. Atzabeim kesef v'zav ma'aseh yedei adam. That's a person's doing. Because the Ben Ish Chai in Aderes Eliyahu says, it can't come from Hashem, because sadness is meguna, is ugly to Hashem. And therefore, it must be self-generated. That doesn't come from the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's true that there's a big Yetzer Hara against it, because the Bahag counts as one of the 630 mitzvahs, the mitzvah to be b'simcha. So he quotes the pasuk v'samachta b'chol ha'toiv asher nosan l'cha Hashem alikecha l'beisecha. You should rejoice with all the good that Hashem gives to you in your household. That's one of the 613 mitzvahs. And since it's one of the 613 mitzvahs, that means that there's a Yetzer Hara that's misnaged against it. There's a Yetzer Hara that we shouldn't have it. That's a very, very important point. The Yetzer Hara tries us not to be b'simcha. We have a directive, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. The Hasidim say that if the Yetzer Hara succeeds in getting us ba'atzvus, then he's won. He won, because the person that is atzvus, person that's ba'atzvus doesn't produce. Now, the Ben Ish Chai, in talking about how to remove atzvus, how to remove sadness, he says we should remember the famous pasuk, Daga b'leiv ish yashchena. A worry in a man's heart, yashchena literally means to squash it. Because we have to realize that worry that brings us low, that brings us to sadness, is a very bad thing. So yashchena. But how yashchena? So the Gemara says, we darshin yashchena yasichena la'acherim. Talk about it with others. When you talk about your sadness with others, it diffuses it. It's a magical thing. When you talk about it with others, it diffuses it. And by the way, this is one of the great roles of a spouse. A spouse has to develop a listening ear. Now, a lot of people don't have a listening ear. They weren't good in school. They didn't listen. They don't have patience to listen. They're wrapped up with the big three, me, myself, and I. That's what people are wrapped up with. The big three, me, myself, and I. It's very important in marriage to be a good listener. Hashem gave us a spouse to take care of. You know, it says, V'simach es ishtoi. A man is supposed to gladden his wife. One of the ways of gladdening a wife, and the same thing is true for a wife. A wife is supposed to be an ezer kenegdai, a helper. A helper is a big thing. And one of the ways is you have to wipe your slate clean if your spouse is troubled, is sad, and listen. Not even an eitzah. You don't have to have an eitzah. Just listening helps. Yasichena la'acherim. Now, the Gemara says another thing. Yasichena midaitai. Get it out of your mind. Now, one of the best ways to get it out of your mind is to learn. Learning gets everything else out of the mind. And I think that this is one of the kavanas in the Gemara, the famous Gemara in Shabbos. Chosh b'roisha yasik b'Torah. Now, of course, it means a headache. And many times I've had a headache before I started saying my daf yomi, and it went away. It dissipated from the learning. But chosh b'roisha could also be depression. Chosh b'roisha yasik b'Torah. It says, B'kudei Hashem yesharim misamchei leiv. The mitzvahs Hashem are upright, they gladden the heart. Another way, as you should know, there are segulas. One of them is to eat malava malka. And at least to have a hot cocoa or a hot tea or a hot, you probably don't want caffeinated before you go to sleep, but a hot decaffeinated coffee. Because it says, Chamin b'matzoi Shabbos melugma. Hot on Matzah Shabbos is melugma, is therapeutic, and it's brought down that it's therapeutic against depression. And there's a simon for this. Mechabesh la'atzvosam. Now, mechabesh is the Rosh Tevis, Chamin b'matzah Shabbos melugma. Mechabesh. Memches beishin. Chamin b'motzoi Shabbos melugma. Mechabesh la'atzvosam. Atzvosam is sadness. Atzvos. Another thing to make sure, if a person is having bouts of sadness and depression, another thing to make sure is that one washes neguvasa properly. The Chazon Ish, when he heard that someone was depressed, he would ask how they wash neguvasa. Because the Mishnah Berurah says that if somebody is a Talmid Chacham, they could forget their learning. And if not, the person can become depressed. So wash neguvasa properly. A lot of people, they don't wash till the wrist. I mean, I don't know why. You know, I could understand people being cheap on the water, you know, when they had to bring it from the river and chop the ice. But today we have to open the faucet, fill up the cup liberally. Don't worry about getting your shirt wet. Pull up your sleeves or your pajama sleeves. Take the cup in your right hand, pass it to the left hand, and pour it over the right, then the left, then the right, then the left, then the right, then the left. If you want to do it an extra fourth time to get rid of the mayim tmeim, right and then left. And there you go. It's a great thing. Netilas Yadayim in the morning is a great thing. Starting, the Zohar says, starting on the right hand first is gaber, it's mamtik, it's adinim, but we pick it up in the right hand first because we start the mitzvah with the right, but then we pass it to the left and start the right hand first, giving honor to the right. Miyamino yesh dos lamai. You know, I can't begin to thank the Reuben family for their magnanimous support of this share, which is listened to hundreds and hundreds of people just on TorahAnytime.com alone. besides on all the other places that carry it. I mentioned in the Mishnah share earlier today that, we have a lot of shiurim archived on TorahAnytime.com. I haven't given recently a shiur on Shalom Bayis, but there are some magnificent shiurim of mine on Shalom Bayis, the marriage workshop, sweetening our marriages. There's about 5 or 6 on TorahAnytime.com. It's a nice thing to do on Motzei Shabbos with your spouse. It is also archived on YouTube as well, and you could get it over there as well. On YouTube there are groupings. I think they're called, I forget what it's called, playbills or something, where one of the groupings is marital harmony, Shalom Bayis, so you can check it out on YouTube as well. We're looking for sponsors. If you want to sponsor next week's share, it'll either be on Bar Midbar or Shavuos, I'm not sure which one. 718-916-3100, rmmwsi at AOL.com. You could also sponsor Masechtas Gittin. We're about up to getting there in the Mishnah Yomis. We're started already today, the 9th parak of Saita. 718-916-3100, rmmwsi at AOL.com. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful Shabbos.